By the way, Greg, have you ever felt like Isaac is the guy that's like trying to throw gasoline on you while you're like trying to like build a campfire? Like, here I am, like here's the rocks and the sticks and everything, and then this motherfucker just comes over with a gas can. You gotta love to be God back yet. Love is a dead, don't you grab it.
All right, welcome to the Rambling Ranting Review Hour. Welcome, I'm your host, Lobster Magnet, and I'm here with my buddy Goro Gregoro. And we have a very special guest, Mr. Boman Modine, BAFTA and Emmy-nominated filmmaker, who also is working in space fantasy. So we are here to discuss the Disney era of Star Wars films, which has reached a bit of a hiatus after the completion of the Skywalker saga, as well as everything else has been put on hold because of the coronavirus, as well as developmental. So many schmoes have talked about Star Wars, but known Bowman for a long time. He's an official filmmaker. Right now he's working with Games Workshop on a Warhammer project, Blood Angels. And apparently you have a book coming out with the Dark Library?
Yeah, it's a series of short stories, and it's called Angels of Death. Yeah, but I mean, you and I have known each other for a really long time, and yeah, it's week 3 for everybody, week 4 for quarantine for me, and I think I've finally gotten crazy enough to take you up on talking about Star Wars, which I don't like to do. You know that. Yes,
I know. I've had your rants in private, and I thought that they were like suckling the nectar of the gods. I could have enjoyed it for hours at a time. It was like far better than, and I've seen many a pedantic rant about Star Wars as it has become a popular thing. So obviously, it seems like the prequel trilogy has gotten this new appreciation. But initially, it was very optimistic about the Disney era. People love J.J. Abrams. Think he was the proper person to get on Star Wars. He was the proper person to basically continue the torch where George Lucas left off. But you were always hesitant, and we'll go into your reaction about The Force Awakens.
Just jump right into The Force Awakens. No, I won't do that.
Where to start? Okay. Where to begin?
Yeah, I mean, it's and by the way, Greg, I know that you and I have battled long since you're really an optimist, right? Like you are an optimist. You like to think about the good in things in general.
Yeah, and it's only for so far and so long though.
Because what I'd like to say is, so Isaac, I think I stood alone for a very long time, when it comes to, I think in optimism in general, I'm definitely more skeptical, and I think that for a very long time, my rants kind of were the minority, but I've noticed that in the past couple of years that people like Greg have slowly started realizing, that they were wrong. It's a little bit like, it's a little bit like Germany after World War II. We shouldn't have gone that far,
But what exactly was I wrong about?
What were the warning signs that you saw in The Force Awakens? Because overall, it's still mostly pretty entertaining. You can see a few red flags and the fact that,
Sure, okay, all right. To get into it...
I had a positive review somewhat of Force Awakens when I first watched it, but then as time went on, I realized this is J.J. Abrams we're talking about. He's the creator of Lost. Things are not going to go anywhere. Like all these, mystery box things going on here. It's not going to be a fulfilling story.
You're not a fan of Lost?
I was in the beginning, just like that Star Wars episode.
Okay, another podcast, another day.
Yeah.
So I'll preface it with this, Isaac. Star Wars is my ex-wife. She and I had this wonderful relationship that spanned many, many years. We had wonderful children, maybe only one. And then in 1999, she decided to just go another way. At first I was really angry. I was really upset. I resisted. I fought very hard in court to drag her back, but she wanted to cut off all of our history. She, threw out all of our wedding pictures, which was like the expanded universe.
Yeah.
Everything's
to every expanded universe thing.
Right. We had an addition to the house called Admiral Thrawn that I thought was like amazing. But then all of a sudden she wanted to sell the house, and I couldn't get on board with that. And I suffered for like 6 to 8 years in court, and episode 2 came out. And in episode 2, like all of my friends who were like picking sides, all of a sudden they realized like, oh no, your ex is actually.
Are you talking about Attack of the Clones?
I am talking about Attack of the Clones.
He's still in the prequel era.
Okay. I'm working my way up because I think Isaac deserves this.
Okay.
And then really by episode 3, we had been fighting for so long that I was finally like, I guess that's a pretty cool lightsaber scene at Mustafar, I guess. You know what? You can have it. And I gave it up. And I started seeing my new girlfriend, Warhammer 40K. And I was happy for a really long time. I would hear little things like, she's moved to Vietnam, or I guess China, and she's seeing a guru now and everything called J.J. Abrams, and I was really like, okay, you live your own life, whatever your truth is. But then she came back to California with The Force Awakens, and she bought our old house, and she tore down the addition, and she built some kind of windmill, with like Christmas lights, like really just, that I can see from wherever I live in this fictitious version of reality. And so every day I'm reminded that she's living in what was our house. Also, I've seen our son, and he's really messed up. He's into drugs now, she's letting him do whatever he wants. And this guy, this guru that she's been seeing, I know that he's he's like the opposite of everything that I would think that she liked, because, I've known her for so long. But I guess she makes her happy, and they have a lot of friends, and they have a lot of money. So I guess everything's okay. We progress further and further, and my opinion of Star Wars has changed with the episodes, the Han Solo movie, which I'm sure we'll get to. And now I will say that Star Wars is just that weird lady I was married to for a little while, and is like into crystal therapy now and thinks that she can like shoot mind bullets. Like, it's just, I don't have any hate for Star Wars, that I used to, burning passion, things that the reason why you've invited me to your show and why I've wasted, like 20 minutes of your time. But I just want to say, for all of the other industry professionals that might end up watching this and are considering hiring me for stuff, which I hope they one day will, I don't want to shoot my own career in the foot. Star Wars is a girl that I used to know. Now, that being said,
even if it's being created by different directors, do you think that's a good analogy?
Yes, she just keeps remarrying people. Like, she cheated on JJ with Ryan, then she realized the analogy is perfect. Like, I'll be 90 years old.
Don't forget about the brief fling with Colin Trevorrow before that blew up in the press.
Sure, she's polyamorous, why not? Her practice got picked up by a really big, international conglomerate of financiers, and she can do whatever she wants. I just feel bad for her son, who I guess by this timeline is like failing out of college and has been in and out of rehab. So anyway, I don't see him anymore either, though. Maybe I'm a bad father, or maybe. Okay, all right. But analogies aside, to answer your question, the moment that I knew that something was odd,
was it the Rathtars?
No. I'm not going to be the guy that also nitpicks gravity in space or sound in space or any of that stuff. I'm not that guy. Thematically, it was the introduction of another desert planet. at first when I saw the trailer, I was like, oh shoot, like what happened to Tatooine? It's got Star Destroyers laying all over it, and there's this homeless woman living in the AT-AT shell. This is it. What happened to Tatooine in the between Return of the Jedi and what I'm about to see? And we as millennials and like post-internet people know about like the hero's journey, and it's just the constant. It's the constant. It begins where it ends. It begins where it ends. Nothing changes. Yeah, it's a cycle, et cetera, et cetera. We all, we're all experts in that now. And while that was relatively new when George Lucas first like came up with it, and then did it with the episodes, I do know that J.J. Abrams is also like is good at working with source material. So I thought like, oh crap, this is going to be Tatooine. Like we're going to go back to Tatooine. There's another. This homeless girl is kind of like Luke Skywalker. Luke Skywalker wasn't homeless, but he was an orphan. There's going to be similarities between their stories, and it's going to start where where the entire series has always started. This is on this backwater desert planet in the middle of nowhere. When they called it, help me out, Greg, Jakku?
Jakku.
Yeah, Jakku. Yeah, that's the word. You were
like, who cares? Respectfully, if I see a desert, it's the Sahara. That's what my brain does, because the Sahara is the largest biome. But we're on a planet that has lots of different biomes. When I watch sci-fi, if I see Star Wars on it and I see deserts, endless dunes, and like the wrecks of former civilization, all that, it's Tatooine. So that was the first red flag, because it's like,
oh, still there, guys? Had a little bit of an internet hiccup. No! Still there?
Oh, sure.
All right, yeah, we had a little bit of an internet hiccup.
Yeah,
so
we're still there.
Go on about why the dunes were a big red flag.
By the way, Greg, have you ever felt like Isaac is the guy that's like trying to throw gasoline on you while you're like trying to like build a campfire? Like, here I am, like here's the rocks and the sticks and everything, and then this motherfucker just comes over with a gas can and just goes, oh, can I swear? Are we allowed to swear?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, technically it'll get demonetized, but it rarely ever gets monetized, so you can swear as much as you want.
Well, you can bleep me, I guess, but this is live as well. Whatever. Anyway, what I'm saying is, Greg, is that yes, of course there are other desert planets. It's a galaxy. There are millions of worlds. However, in terms of my like mind, right, my viewing brain, when I see desert planets and lightsabers, it's Tatooine.
Mm-hmm.
When I see snow planets, Hoth. When I see jungle planets, we haven't had a jungle planet. See, we haven't had a... No, we could... Well, okay, yeah, maybe Yavin 4. But what I'm saying is that there could have been something else. At least when I watched George Lucas create a bunch of random planets that don't have any names, we went to like Mushroom Planet and City Planet and, all of these different places. And it had a new language to it. And so that was the first red flag for me. Going into it, I have a thing... I'm not going to use the word Mary Sue. I'm not going to do that.
I might use it.
Let me say that all of the Star Wars films, all of them, have been created by some of the greatest artists that like the human species can produce, right? Along with the technology that changes the way the military looks at their, next 15 years of development. And then finally, has some of the best talent. Like, I think Daisy Ridley is an excellent actress.
Oh, yeah.
J.J. Abrams, you can't deny, he's not. He's really good at casting.
No, the guy casts like a MFer. So, but that being said, it doesn't fix the fact that, okay, you know what, Greg, tell me about Luke Skywalker before, not expanded universe or any of that stuff, but tell me about Luke before he decides to go into the desert to go after R2-D2. What do you know about him?
He's just a dreaming, innocent.
What is he dreaming about?
he's dreaming of being like a hero fighter pilot.
There you go, fighter pilot. And is he good at being a fighter pilot?
Yeah, he's one of the best.
He can bullseye
he can shoot.
He can bullseye womp rats with his T-16 back home. You know, exactly. Fuck you, Wedge. So what I'm saying is that there was a very slow grow process. You know, we knew that Luke Skywalker was this pilot. He could pilot a ship himself. Why does he need Han Solo? You know, like things like that. Is he whiny? Sure. Yeah. But we know that he's got this basic skill. Is he good with droids? Sure. His adopted father makes him work in the shed all the time. Is he a farmer? Yeah. Does he hate being a farmer? Sure. You know, like we have all these foundational feelings, and if you go back and watch it, it's actually it's a mastercraft in film, like regardless of your opinions of lasers and whatnot, of just like establishing the world within the first 15 minutes. I can't do it. I hope to one day be able to do that. But then I see Daisy Ridley come on, and it's like, okay, she's a scavenger, right? She's taking parts to sell to some guy who's going to give her sludge food, which she's happy about. No, she's not. She doesn't.
It's sludge food, which is, like, to see it in practice, it looks kind of neat. Like you just add a little bit of water in it and heat it up, and it's like, wow, that's a lot of food.
Right, and she's happy about it, right? And that's the economy. We're stripping warships down to make sludge food. That's okay. So she's happy. She puts on a rebel helmet and she sits. I don't know why it's a rebel helmet though, since we're surrounded by Imperial Rex. You know, so that's once again right there. Like, okay, what's wrong with that? If anything, she should be putting on an Imperial helmet. You see what I mean? Like, it's simple, like, it's incremental steps. And you can, and, you know, and Greg, you're one of them. A lot of people say, like, oh, God, like, you're nitpicking to death. I'm not. It's just, if you look at every single building block of any movie that you want to watch over and over and over, the building blocks have been considered exhaustingly, you know? And it might not have the meat. Like, nobody knew Boba Fett was going to become like the you know, fulcrum of which all coolness is measured from. He's a background actor for most of the movies, you know, and he gets killed, but whatever you want to call it, he gets temporarily knocked out by a blind guy, you know, like nobody knows what's going to be cool or what's going to work. But if you keep going back and you keep and I haven't even gotten to the first 15 minutes of Force Awakens, and me as a viewer, as the person that complained for 10 years, who no longer has friends, who Jet Lucas has a low opinion of, and who my wife doesn't let me talk about Star Wars in public.
You know Jet Lucas? Who's that?
I knew Jet Lucas. I was in a role-playing game for Star Wars with him, and I went off on one of my tirades. And after he left, I mean, we're friends on Facebook. Jet Lucas is involved with the Mandalorian. Like the guy's also canon. You know, he was in. I think he was. Yeah, he's in Revenge of the Sith. He's the one of the only Padawans that fights back. But I have not. The guy's a really nice guy. He just got married. He's a super cool dude. But I made the mistake of. It's okay. You don't know him. You can say whatever you want.
Okay.
Unlike the president, you can only crap talk the president. But I've met him twice, so he is an MFer. I'm trying so hard to curb myself in so many ways. But what I'm saying is that if you go back and examine the building blocks, and you shouldn't think about the building. Like, nobody should think about how a bomb drops in space. No one should think about that. The fact that you are thinking about it is a fundamental failure in the storytelling process. You know, like, your brain shouldn't catch on these things. You
you lagged out a tiny bit there.
Oh, okay. Well, just basically, the point of a good story, and by the way, I'm hoping to tell these stories as a filmmaker, is to carry you into this narrative. And then at the end of the movie, you guys debate it. You shouldn't watch one of my movies or any movie and within the first 15 minutes be going like, huh? You know, like you shouldn't, that's not what should happen. Just like when you pick up a book, the first chapter shouldn't be like, well, I don't know where this, you know, like this is vomit, you know, like that's one of the reasons why there should be rules. And I think that the reason why there's not is for cool factor.
That is what J.J. Abrams is. It's kind of like, you remember the old reboot of Star Trek?
Yeah.
It's very entertaining, and this is a challenge.
Extremely entertaining.
It's really entertaining, but I can barely remember any of the details of what happened. I don't think you could put a gun to my head and I could give you a summary.
You know, one of the very common things that ends up happening on any, like, you know, any talk about film is like, there's always going to be somebody that then says, well, then you take $100 million and you tell a story, right? Like that's usually what ends up happening. I have no idea what I would do with $100 million. I'm telling you right now, I have no idea how to spend it. I would love to, but when you're making a movie for an international audience with hundreds of millions of dollars, with the expectancy that you are going to make $1 billion, like that's effectively what Marvel has taught us. Like Marvel movies need to make $1 billion to make their investors happy. So the amount of stress and the amount of
are you talking about worldwide? Like
yeah,
worldwide.
Yeah, that's the expectation, and Star Wars also has that expectation as well, which is why
any movie.
A lot of that, from what I've understand, is like it has to appeal also to the China's box office, because China was one of the biggest factors in like Marvel's success, like in terms of its revenue, right?
Yeah. But see, what you've done is, and this I think is going to be something that changes as a result of more people getting screens in front of them, is a movie used to have to appeal to like everyone, right? I have nothing against China, but the United States filmmaking machine, the industry, having to kowtow to Chinese tastes has lowered the ability to make movies that are long lasting, you know? And by long lasting movies, I mean something you're going to see more than once.
Well, right. Because like also there's like a huge deal with like censorship there as well.
I'm not going to comment on that.
Yeah.
But what happens when you try to appeal to, like, look, a fart joke is going to make 100 people in a room laugh and one person uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
But my long-winded rant about how my grandfather is like a doddering racist, two people might laugh, and 98 people will, or 99 people will like just walk away and like, I don't want to hear about that. You see what I mean?
Well, it's also like a great example of like the sort of like Judd Apatow era of comedies where you have these sort of like long-witted films that have like a lot of improv, never play overseas just because they're so baked in.
Yeah, no, I mean, and what ended up happening over the course of, you know, let's say between 1999 and 2018 comfortably, is you have the loss of the niche movie because it needs to play wider. It's why horror became more accessible. You know, instead of being something truly terrifying, it's something thrilling. You know, even the loss of the word horror is something that, you know, is something that a lot of people don't like because it's too niche. But now what's happening as a result of things like Netflix, which is why I think The Mandalorian, and I know we're not going to talk about it, but why The Mandalorian was successful, is that the people that seek it out and the people that want to see it find it, and a product, you know, which is what film and television series and stuff like that are, doesn't need to rely on the mass. It can actually seek out the niche. And I think that that's why you have an improvement in storytelling right now, because the people that want to see that stuff are now empowered to do so, as opposed to Marvel films and and the Star Wars franchise, because those are effectively holding up an empire, the Disney empire, which is in its which needs a success every time it invests in a movie. However, it has lost its commentary.
Well,
sorry.
No, this is like an interesting question since you brought in the Marvel that I was kind of curious. Like, I know you're not a big fan of the Marvel movies, and I'm sort of like half and half. I can understand both sides of the argument. And it's sort of like, oh my God. Sorry.
I was never a comic book guy.
There's two sides of the argument that, on one hand, the Marvel films kind of feel like a mush, where they all just kind of come together as this like slop, where they become indistinguishable. But then there's the part where it's like, oh my God, this is fulfilling the fantasy that I thought I'd never have back in the day when genre stuff was kind of like considered to be stupid lowbrow trash. And occasionally you get a bone where like, in the Batman movie they mention Metropolis. Oh my God, that's so cool. How cool would that be to see Batman and Superman on screen? And now, that's not good enough. We need to see them fight. But one thing that sort of Marvel has done a lot better than Star Wars, and you could say that they both need to be in the same arena, and largely the sort of changes to releases that people like serialized long-form storytelling. They like arcs, they like build-ups and payoffs, and even if these things are meant to go infinitely, what do you think sort of like Marvel was able to do right in terms of plotting their serialized storytelling versus Star Wars, where it feels like there wasn't much?
I think that's just what happens when when anything is made by committee. I don't care what I hear through, industry articles and stuff like that. I mean, clearly Rian Johnson and J.J. Abrams probably never sat down and went over each other's outlines. It doesn't matter. I mean, I have theories as much as anybody else who is a moviegoer and somebody who's somebody working in the industry. I have my theories as to why that is, but it doesn't matter. There was no communication between The Force Awakens and
Last Jedi.
Thank you.
It kind of felt like a game of telephone, right? It was a game of telephone where
where one person
was like, okay, whispers to his friend, and then the friend whispers to Rian Johnson. Oh, and he's like, oh, okay, I got it. I know where you're going with this, JJ. And he's like, all that building up from the referencing from the previous movies, the original trilogy. Oh, now you want me to wrap it all up and start telling a brand new story, right?
Okay.
And then JJ's like, and he whispers that to JJ, and JJ's like, the fuck? I did not say that.
I got the telephone analogy by just you saying telephone analogy. I didn't need to walk through of how telephone works. The only difference I would say is that the guy who's in the middle between them doesn't speak English and, might be a Nazi. I don't know. So what I'm going to say is that J.J. Abrams, and there's a lot of padding that was around that first movie of Force Awakens. The Force Awakens, excuse me. Because, he had to recover from what everybody calls, the catastrophe that was the episodes 1 through 3. I don't give him that because I saw Star Trek. And I'm not a big Trekkie. Love Deep Space Nine. Every Trekkie on the planet will tell me I'm not a real fan then.
It varies. The opinion on Deep Space Nine is kind of like switching around as like the...
I embrace it.
I like all the Star Treks in their own way, but I was like more of a casual...
Yeah, I never got on board with the whole like Star Wars versus Star Trek. That I think is previous generation of nerds needing to fight about something at the dawn of the internet. Like, I don't think it's real. I think very much like I don't think flat earthers are real. I'm very conservative, or dare I say Republican, when it comes to my opinions of flat earthers, because if I haven't met one, then I don't think that they exist. I went to the bank. What was aside, but I went to the bank once, and like the teller said casually, like, "Oh no, there was a flat earther in the other day." Which, by the way, judging by what I just said, means that I walk the earth asking people, "Have you ever met a flat earther?" And I do. But I proceeded to go back to that bank like 6 or 7 times that week in the hopes of meeting that flat earther. Like I really want to know more. Anyway, I don't know how we got on that, but
it was an interesting tangent. But going back,
they have to believe that NASA is lying to them the whole time.
I mean, the FBI is maintaining an ice wall.
Big conspiracy. The only thing you can trust is like flight logs or something.
We don't get to talk about it because Isaac didn't invite a flat earther onto the show. And Isaac, I will pay you to find a flat earther so that I can talk to them about Star Wars. Anyway,
we have a lot of time. Maybe I'll dig around and see what I can do. But
you are in Jersey. Okay, so
shit.
So
hold on one second, guys. Someone rang the bell. You guys
keep going.
During quarantine?
You guys can keep talking.
By the way, look at Greg's setup. He's got he's become like a professional gamer now, right?
A little bit. I wouldn't say he's a professional gamer, but he does casual streams.
Anyway, I don't. We're in the thicket right now.
I know it's amazing. There's a decent amount of concurrent viewers, but nobody's said anything in the chat because I guess they're so enraptured, as I knew they would be.
Look, if you look at Force Awakens and you make excuses for it, then it's effectively. I'll bring up one of my movies, right? Like so Dark Web, right? Which is on Amazon right now. You can see it. I had no idea what was going to be shot that was going to bookend the show. I wrote the meat in the middle, and I didn't do the intro or the outro. That was another director that did that. But you don't know that. When you look at my IMDb credit and it says that episode, I can't explain to you that there was that thing that happened in production, right? Mm-hmm. So that's it. That's the product. I have to stand by the product, or I have to take my name off of the episode. But it's a choice or the other. And by the way, I don't mind it. It works. It's a whole anthology, like Black Mirror. Like Black Mirror. That's being a little bit generous. Black Mirror is amazing. But
I was muted the whole time. I thought that was clear, like that each episode was its own director.
Yeah, was its own little. Yeah, okay. So, but J.J. Abrams doesn't get to sneak into my movie theater and be like, "Oh man, like let me tell you, I didn't want to go to the desert. They made me go to the desert." I can't be like, "Oh, it's okay, J.J." Where did you want to go? Oh, I wanted to go to Florida. Like, oh, wow. I can't have that conversation with him. So I have to just embrace when I pay for the movie and I sit down in the seat and I don't eat the popcorn because the popcorn in the movie theater is overpriced. I have to just embrace whatever I see. Making excuses for what you're watching, I think is, and call me inflammatory, but I think is like the beginnings of fascism. I do. I really believe it. The moment that you start like, oh, well, the leader doesn't mean that, he's just saying he's going to send children to internment camps. He doesn't want to. Like, that doesn't make any sense. That's what's being said and that's what's happening. So that is the reality that you live in. When you watch a movie and you make excuses for it, fascism.
That's very interesting that you should mention that, because there's this wonderful discourse on like Twitter and online where there's a lot of defenders of the sort of the Disney era trilogy, just because they feel that the creators and the intent sort of represent a more progressive view, and because it represents a progressive view, and you have that a lot of that in the discourse where it's.
Greg, do you like Ewoks?
They're okay. I mean, and they expand more and more on.
No. Return of the Jedi.
Return of Ewoks. Yeah, they were fun little creatures to help beat the Empire. I watched it all and I enjoyed it as a kid, and I still do. I had a sense of like, I wasn't as nearly as disgruntled as I am now about Star Wars. And back then, like Ewoks, I just accepted it. as a kid, and I still do. Like Ewoks, they help beat the Empire. It's like just because they're all a bunch of like dwarves in costumes, like
little people
in costumes, fighting, like because they couldn't afford Wookiees to fight the Empire. It didn't really detract that much.
And yet, I'm sure, Isaac, there are plenty of examples that you can think of people who hate the Ewoks.
Oh, of course, because they're obnoxiously cute commercial. They feel like it was the capitalist George Lucas sort of like taking over Star Wars, and they hate the idea that like the Empire and the Stormtroopers were basically defeated by teddy bears and whatnot.
Bear bears, yeah, I've heard.
Like creative solution because it was shortage on budget.
So,
like you can't like 100 people in Wookiee costumes.
Sure, I'm building the campfire of criticism, right? Okay, so I'm going to come to the defense of Ewoks. A lot of people seem to forget the fact that one of the first scenes that we see Han Solo, for example, in the Ewoks, he's being put over a bonfire, which is slowly being lit for the purposes of the Ewok community eating him. So these very cute little Care Bears are cannibals, or whatever you want to call a sentient that eats another sentient. I'm going to use the layman's term cannibal. They're also extremely vicious in that they've created an entire... I mean, it's not like they created the catapult system, the two swinging logs to destroy AT. I mean, first of all, like what animal did they need that to kill?
Oh, I know exactly which one.
Yeah, you do. They're a very militant society of arboreal cannibals. Okay, and I can talk ad nauseum about Ewok culture, including speak a little bit of Ewok. So,
yep.
Yep. He said yep. So what I'm saying is that even the building blocks of what could have been a capitalist George Lucas decision, catering to 12-year-olds or whatever, still has an enormous amount of lore and consideration that the three of us who this conversation would have been much more interesting 5 years ago, back when Greg was still burning the torch. But we have three different opinions regarding something like an Ewok. Now, what are those little?
What does that mean? Burning the torch.
Every time we talk to.
Who is this?
Ooh.
Steven. Is this Stephen Boyer?
It's Steven.
Hello, Steven.
Hello.
Stephen Boyer, what are you doing?
I saw that you're talking about Star Wars, and I was just curious how the forbidden fruit would taste.
Isaac Shapiro, Gregory Lanzera.
Hello, Steven. We'd have to adjust this.
Stephen Boyer is an editor of some renown. We've worked together many times. Yeah. I think he wanted to watch the stream. I don't think that he wanted to become part of the stream. But I'm very happy that he's joined, because Stephen, who worked with me on several movies, has been party to the hardcorest rants.
Yes.
The hardcorest rants?
Oh, like we're talking like
Isaac. You think we should let this progress?
Yeah. Oh heck yeah! I have no idea how you even got in here, but welcome, Stephen.
Literally, Boman, your link just lets you join a meeting on Facebook. I thought that's what this was.
Did you send the link to not to the stream, but you sent to the link to the chat room?
That's awesome.
If you want me to exit,
no. This is perfect.
Because I was like, I'm just gonna listen to this while
We're just gonna have a whole bunch of people join.
Well, unfortunately, you have to pay. 4 is the limit, but we've got you in there.
You know what, Isaac? What you should do in the middle of my next rant is you should post the actual address so if anybody can watch.
Sure thing. I'll put it in the chat.
There you go.
So if you want to share it around, you're more than welcome to. It's in there.
Maybe I can edit the overlay as we're talking. Let's see.
Wow.
Let's have a moment. Steven, we're just going to fix this thing that's happened. Okay. How many people, just out of curiosity, does it have the ability to say how much how many people
we've got
watching?
17 concurrent viewers.
Oh, that's exciting. Okay.
And there was someone saying that I look like a less attractive Poe with his face next to him.
Jesus.
You know what? I don't think that Poe is particularly attractive, so that's pretty incredible.
People love Poe. Less attractive or more attractive? Because I
thought Oscar Isaac was a heartthrob.
Yeah, you know, I'm a heterosexual man, and I can go ad nauseum about how beautiful and perfect The Rock is. I can't do that for him.
Well, I mean, The Rock is a glowing, effervescent sun of positive energy who was able to keep the same level of sincerity for his like HBO show as he would for his, shitty Rampage movie. So I think there are very few people who can keep The Rock, live up to The Rock standard.
Yeah. I consider the moment that I think it's in The Rundown, when The Rock is in a bar and Arnold Schwarzenegger passes him and says, "Have fun." I consider that the proverbial passing of the torch of the only other actor I could see that could accomplish the same thing in his movies.
The Rundown is very underappreciated, and I remember hearing many people say that was like the sort of Rock showcasing that he could be the versatile talent who would conquer all of everything.
Huh.
But anyway,
all right.
Back to Star Wars.
Back to Star Wars. Okay. So, Stephen, what I was just talking about was the fact that you can't make excuses for what ends up on the screen.
Okay.
And
it's tough.
It's tough.
Well, because there's legitimate excuses sometimes, but that is
there
tough.
are. I mean, yeah, but I mean,
It's
like
if
they could create Apocalypse Now, you can create Star Wars.
Yes, although that movie was done with absolutely like no studio interference, which is the difference, I think.
Well,
maybe that's it.
Here's my question, Stephen. Since this is my first time meeting you, what is your opinion on the sort of Disney era Star Wars? Are you pro Star Wars? Do you think it was fine? Do you think it was a slowly burning Hindenburg? Or
is this being recorded?
Yes, it is being live streamed and it is being recorded.
Yeah, it's on YouTube.
I've already, Stephen. I've added the disclaimer how much I would love to work with Disney as well as Marvel Studios.
I'm gonna cop out and probably leave because I don't know if I should talk about Star Wars in any capacity.
How about like a 1 to 10? 10, this is the best. You can't wait to go to the Galaxy's Edge, and 1 versus maybe not.
I'll say I thought it was really disappointing. And I'm glad people like it, and I still have a lot of friends that like it. I'm glad there's
people like it.
I'm glad there's movies that like people went to the theater and saw. But like that's about what I can say. I can tell you that when I saw all of them, with the exception of maybe parts of Rogue One, I was pretty sad. I liked The Force Awakens when I saw it, and then Boman convinced me otherwise. I saw The Force Awakens 6 times. I saw The Force Awakens 6 times in theaters, and then Boman and I did a movie together where we were like remote for like 3 weeks. And during those 3 weeks...
Was that in Gilroy?
That was in Gilroy. And like my excitement for The Force Awakens was here. And then by the end of that 3 weeks, along with a lot of other things that I was believing in,
I mean, there was a gun on set. It was almost a shootout on set. So
yeah, that was a pretty brutal film. I like to say I became a man on that movie, and part of that was not liking the new Star Wars movies.
That was the sort of culmination of leaving childish things behind, having a shootout, and then realizing the new Star Wars wasn't so
being
great.
around weapons, working an 18-hour day, getting yelled at, and then like realizing Star Wars.
Did I yell at you a lot on that shoot? That you can see that movie, by the way, on Netflix right now.
I know. I'm scared to watch it.
So am I.
We should watch it together.
I'll watch it with you during this quarantine.
Yeah,
for
we
sure.
have to watch it together.
What was the movie? And now I'm morbidly curious.
Should we say the movie? I don't know.
Say the movie.
It was called Desolate. I mean, the movie itself was, I'm sure, is fine, but the production was really, really difficult. That's all.
No, a really great crew as well. I think I was the second AD that was brought. Like literally numbered. I was the second AD to jump on board that project because there were a lot. It was a very complicated shoot. I mean, the producers were incredible. It's got a really good the premise of the movie is that it's set in a what is it? Like a fictitious drought, and it was during the California drought. And it's a little bit like Mad Max. It's like 6 months before Mad Max, but before everybody like shaves their hair and starts wearing
like
spikes.
The first Road Warrior movie,
right? Exactly. It's an interesting movie. The reason why the production was so difficult is because they were trying to pull so much off with the budget that they had, and I think that they did. I think that ultimately they did pull it off.
Yeah,
but like we were also in Gilroy,
California. Yeah, I mean it was just really, really hard. Yeah,
we were in Gilroy, California, which is the garlic capital of the world, and other than China, of course. Like a biker gang showed up across the street, and they were going to kill the bartender. And we're shooting in the parking lot, and it just was like. And I had just explained to the PAs like the difference between like a 10-1 and a 10-4 and a 10-99, and I had said jokingly like a 10-99 is when you have like an active shooter situation, you know, and I saw all of these guns come out from the bikers, and I was like, oh, 10-99. I will say this, Steven, it was amazing. Steven just went into like, oh, we have to get everybody to safety, and the only person that can like call safety on set is Boman now. So like everybody like huddled into the trailers, into the it was a crazy movie.
And yet that was less traumatic than this. Realizing what Star Wars had become.
I do feel bad about that.
It's okay.
By the way, Greg, you and Steven would have been really like compatriots in terms of like your levels of optimism. Truth and beauty, and I think
I get that vibe too. I think,
I know Stevens really was a ray of sunshine, and then I guess the cloud of adulthood started blocking the sun.
I still am. At my company, I'm considered the most like positive person at the company, which is a strange title, but
so well, you gain your manhood by coming to the horrible realization that not everything of Star Wars is great, and then then you will become a more positive person as you move forward in life.
I will say this about the new Star Wars films. The thing that I did like about it was that they were kind of metatextual, and that Kylo Ren was sort of like a cosplayer. He was sort of somebody who's like obsessed with the other original films, right? He dresses up as Darth Vader. And, if they had explored that more, that would have been cool. But like his introduction in Force Awakens and him being like basically just a fanboy who's like, I guess this word's overused, but he's like a toxic fanboy. And like the fact that he's the bad guy, like that's kind of interesting. And that makes it, they're interesting to read because of that. But like, they just kind of make in the second one. They kind of just make him just an angry kid.
Well, that's interesting. I've never
heard of that. That's really interesting.
An argument for Star Wars based on that.
Well, it's like, one of the things that
fanboyism is like the toxic element to Star Wars, like that kind of metaphor.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've been called a toxic fanboy, I guess once or twice before someone realizes I'm so much more. There was this. There's a girl that I went to grade school with, and I'm not going to say her name, but we'll call her Anna. Anna was what can I say? Like by the time we were in 7th grade, like she was wearing makeup, and this is the 90s, by the way. So makeup means something completely different back then. Before the internet taught us, how to homogenize that concept. She'd wear like floofy scarves made of feathers and like, I guess, panther print. Did anybody ever see Clueless? Like,
that sort
right.
of kind of a form of 90s sexuality.
I wouldn't say maybe sexuality. I don't think I knew what sexuality was when I was 12. But when I became involved on Facebook more often, and then I graduated college, and like everybody goes through that reconnect. Well, actually, our generation went through like a reconnection with people, Steven, everybody here is over the age of 30.
You seem like you're the spring chicken. You have that youthful look in your face versus every one of us who's been grizzled and crushed by something or another.
I mean, that's happened to me, but just...
I mean, Steven's definitely been crushed, but yeah. And one of those things is me. But
No.
No. I'm just playing. But what I'm saying is that this girl reached out to me in the middle of one of my rants about, and we can get back to it on Daisy Ridley and her character Ray. Excuse me. I can't. You know what? Look, this is a testament.
Kylo Ren.
No. I love Kylo Ren, sort of. I think Adam Driver's an incredible actor. But this is what I mean. Like, I can tell you different parts of Echo Base. I can't even get the main characters' names right. You know, like, and somebody could tell me like, oh, well, that's just because you've lived with it longer. My brain is not that intelligent. Like, I forget shit all the time. I can go into intricate detail on even the episodes, which is why I don't think of the episodes anymore as bad movies. I mean, you can do the same thing to the Gungan social, economic, cultural relevance on the planet Naboo that you can do the Ewoks.
Well, that's interesting that, like, you sort of... You don't think the prequels are good, but you have an appreciation in the sense that they still have that sort of George Lucasian world building. But I'm on a tangent, and I apologize. This is why the Rambling Ranting Review Hour.
Anne recently called me a toxic fan and a gatekeeper. You know that
you do gatekeep a little bit, just a little bit.
You know, and that is only because I think it's because I grew up with people that were predominantly older than me. You know, I used to hang out at the local comic book store, Games Workshop. And yeah, I mean, the guy that I considered my best friend was probably like the staff there, like Philip Coble, you know, who didn't even really allow me to have an opinion until I'd earned it. And I don't think that your feelings, and I think that this is the part of me that is a gatekeeper. I don't think just because you like something allows you to have an opinion on it. Like a baby, for example, you know, if you feed it bacon or whatever meme is going around right now, you feed it sugar for the first time, and it reacts like, "Oh my God, this is amazing!" Like, that's not an opinion. That's a feeling. That's an emotion.
Yeah.
And it will want more. But what experience will teach you is that if you continue eating bacon, you're going to have a heart attack. And if you continue eating sugar, all the teeth are going to fall out of your head. I mean, that's what adulthood or experience gets you.
Yeah.
And that's an opinion.
I want to add on this if I could, because I find it interesting. Because I get into this discussion all the time at work of like, what's a good movie versus like, what's a movie you enjoyed? And like, we do a lot of ranking at work. We're a social media agency. We do a lot of that stuff. And a lot of it's like ranking movies. And we just do that stuff internally sometimes. And like the thing we get into is like, well, I really enjoyed that film. And I really liked watching that film with my wife or something. But then it's like, okay, but was it a really good movie? Or did you just like enjoy the sort of like natural emotional reaction to that kind of story, especially a story with a happy ending? And it's like, I feel like sometimes you almost have to like create two things where like one is the objectively good movie, one is like the, you know, your whatever, your 2001s and stuff like that, where it's like these are objectively like these are great films. If you don't like 2001, it's fine. But like, you know, just I'm more saying like, you know, the kind of classically agreed upon, like you could put this in a museum kind of thing versus like, I just had, you know, anecdotally, I had a nice time with that film. And or like it's my favorite movie, and like favorite movie versus like what I think is the best movie. I feel like those are actually like very different things.
Right. I don't think that you should be. We live in a time where we're all taking the tests that Stephen is talking about. You know, you like, you know, if you answer these 15 questions, you're like Dumbledore or you're
right.
like Harry Potter. You know, like, I mean, and which is fun. And I've, by the way, taken thousands of them now, and I am like Dumbledore. But
by the way, Isaac, I just sent you a new overlay.
Okay.
Including Stephen.
But I don't think. I think that we rely too much on opinion these days. And I think the way that we consume our entertainment. By the way, I think entertainment is one of the things that has kept like World War III from happening. You know, and I think that movies and television are the things that are saving more people's lives than any other force that has ever existed on the planet. And maybe that's because I make entertainment content, and I have a high opinion of of my industry.
I think of things like gladiatorial arenas and like The Walking Dead, like had this remember the governor from Walking Dead? He had like this human versus zombie like gladiatorial arena just to appease the citizens and take their minds off of like all their hardships and everything. That's basically,
I would recommend you listen to the podcast Hardcore History.
I've heard of that
Dan
one.
Carlin. Yeah. And he has a whole, there's an episode called Painfotainment, which goes into that a lot. And I'm going to say that we have gone quite literally over 1,000 years in the opposite direction of the gladiatorial arena. Yes, it's easy to say that like YouTube, right? Or like whyweloverussia.com, people of Walmart, like any of that, like kind of voyeurism is still a part of like the human psyche. And I'll be the first person to agree. But by and large, if you look at Free Willy, Home Alone, Father of the... if you look at... I'm talking about these movies that a lot of people have seen. They have brought more awareness to a situation than anything else could. Like, we now like feel bad for killer whales in general.
Because like movies are becoming more and more reflections on our own realities, right?
I say they were. Maybe they were. I would say since 2009 is when we really stop, and it becomes more about the gratuity concept. But at the same time, nobody's actually getting into a suit of Iron Man armor, flying to Iraq and killing a bunch of people. Like, no one's doing that yet. And I think what movies and television has done...
I remember hearing about this like group of like Harvard or Brown students that almost hired a PMC to like try and save people in Darfur. That was like the closest it came to it, but never went through.
I mean, sure. I mean, like, look, what I'm saying is there are more people on the planet now than ever before. And if your measure of success is survival,
one little question from the chat for you, Boman.
Sure.
Triple A asks, "What awareness did Home Alone bring?"
Look after your kids.
Don't leave your kids at home by themselves.
No. I mean, look, if you look at Home Alone and you look at Die Hard, it's basically the same exact plot, But if you look deeper than that, I mean, perfect example, right? Home Alone talks about brought a lot of awareness to Americans specifically that are depressed. And there is no better example of that in that movie than the old man neighbor next door that eventually saves him. I'm going to forget his name. By the way, little Easter egg or whatever you want to call it, like that guy is living alone during the holidays and is extremely depressed. Refuses to talk to his own son, and reflects what Macaulay Culkin's character could become. Like you're rejecting your family, you don't want to talk to them. It's the holidays. Like, swallow your pride and give them a call. And honestly, before that film, depression is not something that Americans handle very easily, and it's not something that we're very good at talking about because. As a country of immigrants, we, by our very nature, severed ties with wherever we came from in order to get here. Now, the internet is different because now you can have conversations like this, but imagine quarantine without the internet. And that's basically all of history.
Yeah.
I mean, so
there'd probably be a lot more riots.
Pardon me?
There'd probably be a lot more riots and people just getting, screw you. But hey, at least now I've got Disney Plus and Netflix, so now I don't feel as angry.
I think all of this, the clothespin holding together society right now is entertainment for sure. And if you took that out, I think that, especially, I mean, I mostly mean during quarantine, I would think it would just.
So if that's you describe it as a clothespin holding
or
it together. So
a pin.
Is
some kind of cable.
Something, some central piece.
Is this new sequel trilogy the grenade pin that is going to unleash the explosion?
I've read this really interesting thing about all 9 Star Wars movies and how it was like a greater than, less than chart. And it was basically that 5 Empire, which is universally agreed upon as like really good. That's the middle of it. And that essentially it was 5 is greater than 4 and 6 is greater than 3 and 7 and so on. And that essentially if you took out 5, this all would kind of fall apart anyway and be silly and we'd feel stupid for talking about it.
I would argue that one of the strengths of the original trilogy and really the strengths of even of just movies maybe made before 95 is that any series, the movie stands by itself pretty well. I mean, Empire Strikes Back, if you watch it by itself, is a standalone movie that's pretty good.
That is sort of the big difference between serialization. And you could argue that on one hand, people like the sort of long-term payoff, and when you do have a long-term serialization, it's good. But at the same point, though, it's also frustrating when something doesn't feel like a complete film and it just feels like a waste of time.
Sure.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it can be done well, though. I mean, I don't know, Endgame, to me, I liked Endgame. And, to me, that wasn't at all a movie that stood on its own. But it was pretty satisfying. It was pretty cool. I know Boman, I know you were not into it, but, I watched all those movies, and Endgame to me was oh, yeah, it's a cool conclusion.
I mean, I had really, really high hopes for Endgame when it started off with Thanos getting his head cut off. Because,
by the way,
what?
I think everyone knows at this point what happened in Endgame.
It's like a $3 billion gross. Everyone said.
I think quite literally 2 billion human beings watched it, and that's everyone on the internet.
Watch that one person be like, I can't believe it.
If you wanted to know what happened to Thanos at this point, you probably know what happened to Thanos. But anyway, go on.
If you didn't know, I mean, they made memes of it. It's all good.
I mean, if they make a meme of it, it's really the countdown is on you. But anyway, I liked what that setup brought. I think the problem, and this is not the place to talk about it because we're talking about other things, but is that the Marvel movies have too many lead characters. And when you have Captain Marvel, for example, who is basically, from my understanding, and again, I'm not a comic book person, but is basically like Superman, but in the Marvel universe. She can do anything. She's super powerful. She basically has every power that she needs for every single problem. That's my understanding. If you know differently, I apologize.
I mean, you're not wrong. That's what she's one of those very convoluted characters that has a very, very long history, but then was kind of reintroduced and sort of became the sort of feminist punk. But go on.
I don't care. But what I'm saying is that when you have that level of character, and then you have a guy like Thor, who is a god of thunder. And then you have the utility man that is Iron Man, who has a suit now that can just morph. It doesn't even need to have a panel that opens and a rocket comes out. His body, his armor morphs into whatever he wants. I mean, he's basically, by the end of that series, he's basically Green Lantern.
Yeah, bro, they got the nanotech, bro. That's how they do it.
Yeah, right. And I hate you so much. But anyway.
See that coming, that's his final form.
Whatever. Yeah. What I'm saying
nanotech thing. It evolved from,
who can? Every movie you got to have an evolution of something. Nothing can plateau. I get it. And of course, the moment he plateaus, they kill him. But what I'm saying is that the movies, by and large, just have too many main characters. And they did something incredible, in my opinion, which is in Infinity War. They killed 2/3 of them.
Yeah.
I was, at the end of that movie, I was like, oh.
It was awesome.
Yeah. You just killed, and maybe, one of my favorite comics is Kingdom Come, which is a DC comic where, they wipe out all but 1% of the metahumans and superhumans. And it's kill your darlings. All the best stuff happens after you kill your heroes.
Yeah. By the way, this comment about Homecoming trailer playing before Endgame is hilarious, and I'm sorry you went through that. That's very funny.
So someone was talking about how, like, when they were watching
Far From
Endgame,
Home.
they played Far From Home, so they revealed that Tony Stark was dead.
That's brutal. That's actually more brutal than like when they accidentally play horror movies before kids or horror trailers before kids movies. That's
really tough. That's really tough. But I mean, look, I'm a big fan of killing your favorite characters. It is a lesson that is hard to teach. As the show that I'm working on with Games Workshop is, because once you find somebody that you really like, you want to keep them around. And I think that, what I will say for the new Star Wars movies is that good, you killed Han Solo, good, you killed. Well, I guess Leia didn't die. I don't even remember the last movie.
It was good. I thought killing off the OT characters made a lot of sense to me.
Well, it was the sort of metaphorical passing on the torch, but the big wasted opportunity was like,
Luke
Skywalker and Han Solo and Carrie Fisher just having like a scene on together and them just being on screen.
Yeah, the fact that they never shared the screen together is just a little weird, right?
It's just weird, and it represents the true, honest fact that the directors of those three movies did not talk to each other.
Yeah,
I also think that the expectations for fans was impossible to reach, but my expectations were pretty low. All I want, like, here are some, and Steven is victim to it. I have a 10-point way of convincing somebody that they didn't actually enjoy something.
It's true.
It's a terrible thing, and I'm not going to spend time doing it in its entirety here on your show, Isaac. But what I will say is, nothing mattered, right? Like, you went and you watched a movie that basically explained to you that nothing matters.
Which movie?
All of them. Nothing matters. Like, okay, so at the end of Return of the Jedi, the unfinished Death Star, and a brilliant, military move on behalf of Emperor Palpatine has finally lured the entirety of the rebellion. Every ship, every soldier that they can scrap together, they've put into a fleet with all of their heroes and all of their personnel. And they have sent it like a Doolittle's raid into Tokyo, right? Except instead of hitting the Death Star, the unfinished Death Star, it's actually a trap. And the Emperor has his best ships, a legion of his finest troops, Darth Vader, his great, everyone is there because he's going to finally crush the rebellion. And a miracle happens, and they survive. And my assumption as to what happens after that movie, since the expanded universe got shit canned, is that we lived happily ever after.
Yeah.
We literally took out, like, we don't need a Nuremberg trial. And by the way, I don't know why I keep on bringing up Nazis. I'm sorry. I apologize. But there's no need for a Nuremberg trials because we literally killed every single Nazi in the same room at the same time during a battle, so it's not weird and like we don't have to like question if it was good or bad. Like no rebel or Ewok questions the death of the second Death Star. No one's like, oh, I'm worried about those contract workers. No, fuck them. All of them are dead. Like we
Inglorious bastarded them.
Exactly. That's a really great reference. But then I watch Force Awakens.
Couldn't you theoretically recruit some former Imperial sympathizers to the rebellion after a big battle like that?
What are you talking about?
Well, maybe there were some planets that were being forced to work for the Empire out of fear.
Oh no, I'm not going on like a theory quest with you. No, I'm just talking about movies. Just movies. Like what I'm just
okay, just for the sake of movies, like
right. We can that can be another show where I tell you what I think happened in detail and what, how do you continue feeding a planet like Coruscant without consistent food trade routes? Like we can do that, but I don't think we need to do that here. What I am saying, though, is
It's
that
nanotech, bro.
Nanomachines, but go on.
every part of me is going to wait for the quarantine to
You
end.
can't beat the shit out of me over
I
video
can't. I
chat.
just
Sorry, keep going. Sorry.
No. You're awesome.
I also like
By the way, Stephen, I'm so happy that you're part of this. By the way,
I didn't think I would be. So, but keep going.
No, I know. So far, everything that you have thought that you would not enjoy with me,
Yeah, no, you're right.
you almost walked out of Gilroy, but I brought you back in.
That's another very sweet story. Don't worry about that.
So
everything
sorry.
like you like now.
So wait a minute. Okay. What I do know, based on Force Awakens, is that it's a kind of anarchy, right? There's human trafficking on a random planet called Jakku, where I'm assuming every Imperial craft must, like, it's some kind of junkyard planet, right?
Yeah.
The Empire is still around, and if anything, they're cooler than before because now they have landing ships, better armor.
Absolutely no context.
Absolutely no context. Like, I have literally no comprehension of how we got from Return of the Jedi to Force Awakens. Something terrible must have happened.
Yeah, and needed to be explained.
Like, you can't just, like, throw me into the deep end of the pool. Like, eventually you have to teach me how to swim. And they did that a little bit with Kylo Ren and the whole backstory of, like, oh, like, Luke Skywalker was going to shiv me while I was sleeping, and so now I'm a mass murderer. Like, okay, sure. But they didn't do that for the Republic. I mean, within the first, I think, 25 minutes of the movie, the Republic is destroyed by a single shot from Starkiller Base. How do you destroy an idea? Like, when I'm fighting the Empire in the original trilogy, or even, honestly, even the episodes, I'm fighting against very specific people, right? The Republic never had a person. Princess Leia is not a member of the Republic. She's a member of the Resistance. I'm not going to, nitpick that. She is part of the Resistance, and the Resistance seems to be completely separate from the Republic.
Yeah, it was. They did not make any of the. It was.
I'm
really,
not.
Yeah.
I know there's books and stuff, but it's not the job of a movie to rely on books to explain itself.
There's
I've
30 books of the Road Awakening of the whatchamacallit. Well, it also
the Stranger Stars or whatever. Yeah,
the Road to the. Every new movie always had like a 30-book publishing deal with like young adult books, real books, children's books, and that was all supposed.
I read every single expanded universe book with the exception of the what was it, the Nest War, Greg? What was that called? It was like the final expanded universe series.
Well,
no, it's after that. But anyway, it doesn't matter. It's dead.
Wait, one more tangent though before you get back. It's like, did you ever follow? You were a big Halo fan back in the day, right?
Yes.
And have you ever played the 4th or 5th game?
The 4th game is where they go back to. I have not played the 5th game.
The 4th game is where he fights the giant monkey in the robot suit, and he fights the robot people on the planet. They're supposed to be the Prometheus or the Forerunners.
Yes, I played the 4th one. I didn't play the 5th one.
Okay, well, you didn't miss much. But the 5th one was like, it had all these sort of ancillary characters from like all the Halo tie-in books and comics and just...
Yeah, and they started turning people into Spartans and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, yeah, look. I don't know why you're bringing this out of you want to just piss me off. I mean, I liked Halo. I stopped liking Halo at some point.
There's an interesting question in the chat about what's worse, the sequel trilogy or J.K. Rowling's retcons of everything.
The sequel trilogy. Hands down.
Interesting.
It's not a question.
Can she do?
Look, okay. I'm just going to put it this way: McGonagall does not respect the centaurs. Okay, she doesn't. She thinks that they like reading the stars is BS. Like, she only is based in like scientific fact and everything. And in that new play, like, she's like, no, we have to believe whatever the centaurs say. It's like, what are you doing, McGonagall? Like, anyway.
I didn't even know that. I missed that completely.
Like the notion that Voldemort would have like a secret love child, like it's just like, you know.
Anyway, back to Star Wars. But the reason why I did this Halo tangent is because I feel like there's a lot of like emphasis on transmedia, where like you, oh my god, if you engage in all this ancillary transmedia, you will get a fuller, richer portion of the story. But then it becomes
true.
And sometimes yes, but then there's like a point where
in what example in any experience that you've ever had is like more information bad?
I wouldn't say it's necessarily bad, but I feel like a lot of the transmedia is not necessarily like the video game creators in most cases are not treated as well as the film creators. So if the film creator, whatever the main canon is, can easily be overwritten by whoever is the highest in the hierarchy. So whether it's like a
but that's not the fault of the X. That's like blaming socialism for the USSR. Like that's just it. The notion of making more data for your fan base to consume should be the objective of every creator that has ever existed. Mm-hmm. You know, it's let's call it the capitalization of that process that's the problem. If I'm going to treat the video game makers worse, I mean, just that sentence alone, like it just, you know, like it should everybody be in? I mean, let's treat it like a marriage. Communication is key to a successful relationship. If the left hand has no idea what the right hand is doing, the right hand could be beating you to death with your own club. Like, you know what I mean? Like is it the mistake of a franchise to rely on any one situation in order to answer another? Yes, that's a misuse of the activity. However, and sorry, Greg,
I just kind of a little bit lost of what you guys are talking about. Like
we're talking about ancillary materials and like, for example,
the expanded universe. The expanded universe.
And a good example of like how to relate it back to Star Wars is the fact that like the context doesn't make any sense. Why is the Empire? And the film doesn't rectify it, but you're expected to sort of go into the expanded books that gives you a
when we were young and Steven was in diapers.
Not alive.
When we were unlife. When we were young, the big argument was, did I need to know what the Clone Wars were? Because in my mind, and in Timothy Zahn's Thrawn trilogy, the Clone Wars was this amorphous event that was so terrifying that it allowed the Emperor Palpatine to take power. Everybody simultaneously forgot what the Jedi were, basically. You know, like all of everything that leading up to New Hope, the Clone Wars was clearly something awful that happened that nobody even really wants to talk about.
That you bring up, okay, Clone Wars is a great example of what New Hope did right versus what The Force Awakens did wrong. They name dropped a war, which probably a lot of confusing political shifts happened during that war.
What was the war?
The Clone Wars.
Oh, the Clone. Oh, yeah.
So at least there was like a name drop of some kind of war. Like, oh yes, your father and I fought in the Clone Wars together, and then everything turned to shit, as you can see right now. Mm-hmm. So, if there was something along those lines in The Force Awakens, maybe it made a little bit more sense. Like, oh, after such and such event, like
sure. Yeah. But that's see ultimately, and Stephen and I are both very aware of it. What happens is that when you introduce a committee into the creation process, none of those questions get to form, because it's a combination of everybody wants their voice heard, which I respect, but then you never like if I say, well, how did Obi-Wan and Princess Leia even know? I mean, Princess Leia is coming in the Tantive 5, and she's coming to a backwater world like Tatooine. Why is she doing that? Oh, because she's going to meet Obi-Wan Kenobi, who's this old wizard that lives in the desert. Yeah, but how does he know her? Okay, well, there was this event that happened called the Clone Wars. Oh, what are the Clone Wars?
Fought for.
Okay, you keep versus somebody that's like, oh no, Princess Leia lands on a planet. Her dad knew him. Done. That's all I need to know. All I need to know is like, hey, you fought in Germany together. Do I need to say World War II, which was fought because, Germany needed self-actualization and was worried about communism like spreading into Western Europe? Like, no, you don't need me to say those words. I can just say Germany.
Well, there's like a certain context.
Why do I keep on bringing up Nazis?
Star Wars is a lot of space Nazis.
Yeah, and we started off with Warhammer 40K, which is just different types of space Nazis. So.
You're a history guy.
I'm a history guy okay. I'm not a Nazi. Is all I'm saying.
No one thinks you are. Nobody thinks you are.
Well, in some certain circles, if you don't like the Disney Star Wars, then you're a Nazi. So sorry.
What was I trying to get to?
Don't even know how to.
About the Clone Wars, like the context of like the Clone Wars is just so important to like building.
Well, in the original movie though, they stand alone. They stand as the finite product that, like in the original trilogy, you didn't really need to know it, but because the sequel trilogy is building upon a previously established work and everything's kind of the same, you sort of like at least need a little bit, even though everyone says that they hated the galactic politics of the prequel trilogy.
Sure, but at least the galactic politics gave context to something I didn't know if I really needed to know about. The problem is that there is zero context in Force Awakens. There's no context for anything.
Almost like
nanobots.
Its own standalone trilogy, like separate from the Star Wars universe. Is it? Or if
it's not a separate trilogy though. It keeps referencing.
I know, which is it's just basically someone's big fan fiction.
Yeah,
but it is exactly fan fiction.
Well, there's a lot. You have to acknowledge that there's now a huge generation of people, even younger than me. I know it's hard to imagine, that are essentially only going to see the sequel trilogy. They're never going to see the prequels, and they're never going to see the OT.
Not my kids.
Yeah, that's different because we're on a podcast. But we have to acknowledge that there's a lot of parents, and I know some at work actually have talked to me about they're like, oh yeah, I'm probably just going to show them the sequel trilogy, and I think that the soft reboot nature of Force Awakens was a play at that, and hey, just start with this.
No, I remember a lot of the defensive. I don't even want to call them nerds because I hold the word nerd to be. It's a very specific category. I think that there's a difference between nerd, geek, dork, and fanboy.
Interesting. That's too interesting for you to. I'm sorry to but then again, this is what I love going into random.
Nerd, geek, dork, fanboy.
Well, give me a one-line description between what difference.
Yeah, just keep it brief. What are the?
Wait.
Okay, actually, this is really interesking. Steven,
you're something about the previous comment, but I forgot. God
damn it! Just let him finish this so we can then get back to it.
No,
are we the four?
No, you're the four. Like Steven, you're a fanboy. Isaac, you are a dork. Greg is a geek, and I'm a nerd.
What am I a fan of?
Stuff in general. There's not a negative connotation to any of these titles except the fact that you're being categorized and nobody likes being categorized and blah. Yeah. But Steven, you don't really care about Star Wars in the way that I care about Star Wars, right? You don't want to care about Star Wars.
I used to. Yes, you're right. No, you're right. Currently in 2020, the year of our Lord, I do not care.
Yeah, right. I mean, you go to movies and you want to enjoy the experience of going to movies, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so hold that feeling.
I love cinema.
You love cinema. Okay,
I do.
So
unironically.
No. I'm not being I'm not casually insulting anybody here.
Yeah.
Isaac, you are a dork in that you inherently find problems with things and you want to capitalize on those problems. As a result, it drives you into kind of like a. I don't even know what to call it. There was a job for people like you when we were all living in one village, you're that guy. We need you to be you're the fifth man, you're the guy that it's like somebody, Steven brings in a cake and everybody's like, oh my God, it's the most amazing cake I've ever seen. And the moment you hear the word amazing, you're like, whatever. The icing. the icing's not correctly imprinted. It's not perfect. Steven's got a long way to go before he makes a perfect cake. And what is even a perfect cake? Like, do you think vegans appreciate how much cream is in that icing? Okay, so that's a dork. Okay, and nerd culture needs dorks, but it hates dorks as much as dorks hate everything. But we need you. Greg is a geek. Greg is a Greek. I mean, he's on the spectrum somewhere, right? And he needs that sense of both a sense of belonging, but also that sense of like Greg will and has almost died for his friends, right? And that's geek culture. Geek culture is very insular, and it takes care of itself, but it doesn't even like comprehend the world that Steven lives in. Like, it doesn't, I mean, he doesn't comprehend the conversation we're having right now, but it's a lot
it's all nanotech to me, guys.
I hate you. But Greg lives in empathy, and he's like the beating heart of a franchise, right? Mm. He doesn't see the faults that Isaac sees. He has these feelings, right? And then there are nerds who are a little bit of a blend of all of these things with an emphasis on kind of, let's call it hoity-toityness or gatekeeping, or let's call it more logic, less empathy, So you would have Greg on one side and you would have me on the other, and then Isaac and Steven are somewhere in the middle. And we create the clan, right? That is... depending on what decade you're in, it used to be called geeks and now it's called nerds. But I wouldn't say that fans are nerds, and I wouldn't say dorks are geeks. Like there is, and Isaac, I don't know if you remember this, but I spent my college years trying to categorize these things. That's how I got into college. It's how I got into college.
I really just thought they were all synonymous with each other, kind of.
Well, like if
you're just literally proving my point.
That was the whole point of the Judd Apatow series. Well, no, it wasn't Judd Apatow, but it gets freaks and geeks. Put
in for that, Boman.
And it all, and by the way, we are all, with the exception really of fanboys, because they're the newest kid on the block. Nerds, geeks, and dorks are all are all negative connotations that society has always labeled us.
Yeah,
I mean, a geek is somebody that eats light bulbs, right?
Originally, and chicken heads.
And a dork is a whale penis. It's just, and I forget what I think. A nerd is like an old word for moron or something. But now nerd culture and previous geek culture has won. We now dictate what is society. So
it's also won, but it's also become
sure.
Sure. Like, I mean, I know people who tune into football every single week and unironically love every Marvel film. That crossover did not exist a while ago.
Exactly. And I mean, and I largely blame the internet for it, because that's what the internet does. It homogenizes. So I don't know how we got on this, but
we were talking about trade routes.
Well, we were talking about the sort of the empire and how the First Order wasn't established.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. They come in hot at the top of Force Awakens. They're just ready to fuck shit up real quickly.
Yeah, there's you hear the Republic is on 5 planets, and they all get shot in the same sky, and then it's done. Rey wants to be a Jedi. She becomes a Jedi. It's really hard for me to hear that Steven knows people that aren't going to show the original movies too, because to me that's almost akin I don't want my kids knowing the story of Jesus. It doesn't matter if you're religious or not. You should know the story of Jesus.
Yeah, I don't know if they're the story of Jesus, but I get what you're saying. But I definitely have friends who are my age. I'm 23, by the way, for the context. But I have friends that are my age who I remember when.
That's not that young.
It's not that young. It's not that young.
It's like nearly a
decade. I have a job and an apartment. Yeah,
you pay taxes.
Yeah, but I have friends that I went to college with. That when the sequel trilogy was coming out, they were basically just I like that it just kind of I like that you don't have to have seen the originals because they're just kind of not that interesting. And that was like a thing that was thrown around a lot, is like, yeah, they're just kind of boring. And I think the word I heard a lot was deified.
Well,
they're like, those original movies are just deified so much. And like,
I mean, and I mean, look, I look at that as in the same way that I look at counterculture, right? Yeah. It's part of the younger generation to reject the older generation. That's how we are a successful species. Like, that's how you learn new things, by rejecting.
Yeah.
I am.
We can't all be Kylo Ren.
If I told a 15-year-old that oxygen was in air, he would. There's a large percent. I mean, I used to teach teenagers. They'll be like, yeah, exactly. There's a lot of CO2 in there, actually, a little bit of nitrogen, old fart, like it's just
do like a TikTok and
like, yeah, exactly. It's just
this kind of brings up another point. Like, it's kind of interesting, like how much of our nostalgia bias is tied with these original trilogy movies.
Well,
that's where I think the whole thing about episode 5 actually being great and the rest being like good or serviceable comes in.
Yeah.
Honestly, because I think A New Hope, if you watch it objectively and you don't know the context of how it was made and all the struggles and all that stuff, it's just like it's a little slow, and it's a little hard to get through. The third act slays, but like it takes a while to get there, and the dialogue is a little forced at times. And if you watch it objectively like that, it's like, okay, like this is really cool though, and like the advancements it made are really cool. And whereas like episode 5 pretty much I think holds up across like end to end. It's a great movie. But that's what I'm saying, is like if you take that out, I feel like the whole thing kind of just falls in on itself, and it's like, why would we even care about this anymore?
Yeah,
and that's part of Steven's nostalgia factor of him. You are joining in that deification process of episode 5, right?
Yeah, I think that one holds up though as like great films.
I honestly, I've recently watched them again. I would say Return of the Jedi is an incredible movie. Like I will now defend Return of the Jedi.
Return of the Jedi is still probably my favorite, actually, of all.
And interestingly, it's the first Star Wars I watched. I didn't know I don't know why, but I didn't know that there was, when I was a kid, I didn't know there was 2 movies before that. So anyway, but we're not talking about those. And it's interesting, by the way, because we only keep going back to the original episodes, or even talking about the 1999 episodes.
I do find that very interesting.
I don't think that you can talk about the new movies in the way that all of us are sitting here talking about the difficulties it took to make them, talking about the character choices.
Well, there was no difficulties in making them.
There were, well, other than the fact that they had to make them.
Yeah, I mean, they had all the support in the world,
all the money, all the support, everything. And again, some of the best, maybe the best filmmakers of a generation, all working on the same movie.
I do want to like go on that, and that I think that like the best thing Star Wars has done for the industry, at least, is it's been this incredible, it's kind of like Avatar, in that it's been this incredible sort of thing that has helped push so much technology forward. And like, and I mean, to me, because, as someone, I work in post, and so this stuff really interests me. And like, what I love about these films is not necessarily sitting down and watching them, but it's like, wow, like every single one of these movies made a huge leap for the industry. Even the prequels made insane leaps in terms of shooting on digital. They were one of the first films to shoot on digital, release digitally. Like, these are insane things. And like obviously the Unreal Engine use in The Mandalorian is insane. I mean, those are always the things that I was more interested in, is like the way that it's like, it's made filmmaking better. And even The Force Awakens, like, say what you want about it, like it improved a lot of things in terms of like how movies were made, and like
they made that organic bread that was made in real time.
Tell me, okay. There's 2 things I want with your comment. I was a big nerd, Star Wars geek or nerd.
Just whatever.
And
get it right.
I really loved like all the behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah, they're great.
Star Wars too, even though like I didn't have like professional interest in it, at least not back then.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know, any kind
you don't have to course correct. Greg is an artist, Stephen, in case you
right. I like all kinds of art and everything, and I love how they built up like the Death Star area with like a whole bunch of like battleship toy props or whatever.
They kit bashed it. I mean, the ships in Star Wars are bashed together from old parts of other models.
It was really the first. It was like really the first pioneering movies to just push that sci-fi genre.
Yeah.
And every sci-fi movie has just tried its best to like copy Star Wars and reinvent itself from Star Wars because of that. And then the second thing, so yeah, I can appreciate the behind the scenes stuff as well. Even though I'm not a professional in the industry.
But well,
and two, there's a second thing you mentioned, I think towards the end, how does the Force Awakens push the industry?
Well, maybe not Force Awakens, but I would say Rogue One.
Rogue One for sure.
And absolute, I mean, maybe the biggest was the Mandalorian. I mean, the technology they used on that, the Unreal Engine and the volume and being able to capture essentially like you move your camera and the background moves with it. You don't have to do any keying. I mean, that's gonna totally change the game for like a lot of people.
See that stuff with the Mandalorian, I had no awareness of, but like for Rogue One, the most obvious thing to me is like the facial technology thing.
Yeah,
try to recreate Grand Moff Tarkin.
Yeah, for better or worse, but like
for better or worse. I mean,
and
again, I don't. The point of this conversation is not to just take a big old like mindless dump on a series.
It's too complicated.
It's too complicated to do.
Oh no! Come back, people! Come back! Internet! No! Oh, we back.
Isaac,
yeah, you guys. We had a little brief hiccup, but you're all back now, right?
Okay.
Yeah. That would just be a waste, right? I mean, if you want to like. If you really want to just get angry about something, like I don't want to have that conversation.
There's a subreddit for that. It's called Saltier Than Crate. Have fun.
Yeah. And I'm getting a little angry over this trilogy, the sequel trilogy.
I used to get angry for sure, but like I said, when I opened this this part of the conversation with you guys, and before Stephen got on, it is a failed marriage. It's not necessarily that I hate her. I just don't know who she is anymore. And if you want, and that's why I talk so much about the original trilogies, because that's when I loved her, or him or whatever.
It's poetic.
But what it really represents for me, who I'm not in. Well, I guess I am in post right now, but I'm not. I'm not an editor. I'm not a visual effects artist. I'm not. I mean, I'm a humanist functionally, and I'm a director and writer professionally. What I look at this movie is it represents on those notes. It represents like just a massive misstep, where. My God, if it doesn't teach somebody to like, if you're going to be part of a trilogy, make sure you talk to the second director and make sure you guys are on the same page before he starts shooting and after you stop filming. Make sure that communication is solid, because, you will tear down a franchise that episode 1 didn't break. Like episode 1 is, a terrible movie. In terms of like what it was at the time, like not everybody was like enraged by it. I mean, people even got pissed off because they thought it was making racial undertones. And by the way, I've met all of those voice actors. They had no idea that that's how it was going to be taken.
Oh, you mean the Newt Gunray and the
sure, right? None of them were making. It wasn't they at least they don't think so. They didn't think it was a shot at China. Or Asians in general, but that's how it was taken.
Yeah.
But even that movie didn't dismantle Star Wars. Like we had stuff after that,
I thought you were going to point out Jar Jar Binks, like how that was like making fun of Jamaicans or something.
Sure, I mean that's a low-hanging fruit. But yeah, like what I'm saying is nobody went into that movie wanting to make like racist choices. You know, at least the people that I've spoken to have never said that. But when you look at the new movies, I would say that Star Wars is largely like compared to what it was, what I remember, and what even Steven will remember when, you know, the only thing to base on was Revenge of the Sith. I guess that would have been the last Star Wars added chapter. Like before this Disney phase that we're in right now.
Yeah.
It wasn't gone. Now, you know, I have not gone to the movies to see Star Wars before. You know, that's unheard of. You know, I went and
watched them.
Did you not see The Rise of Skywalker in theaters?
I think somebody paid me to go see it.
I would pay you to see it, actually. Yeah.
And it was like a month after it had come out.
Yeah, that was the last one, because I saw them all like opening night kind of thing, and like Rise of Skywalker was definitely the one where I was like, I'm good.
Well, and look, everything changes, and maybe younger people, you know, in their, you know, the 14 and 15-year-olds that are going to the movies these days still get excited, and I hope that they do. I don't want to take anybody's excitement away, but my God, like, you lost everybody. You know, you used to have everybody. Yeah. And now everybody is gone.
Yeah.
Now it's, these movies are for 15-year-olds. Pass on the torch, old man. And it's like, I'm 30, I'm 31. Like, fuck you.
I really hate the argument that the argument that a film is just for a certain demographic.
It's so dumb.
Because there are plenty of movies for, you know, children and families that I like. How to Train Your Dragon is one of my favorite movies like ever.
I just started watching it. It's amazing.
It's incredible. Yeah. I mean, there are plenty of rom-coms and coming-of-age films and LGBT films that I absolutely love and completely like get invested in.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to like
just tell a good story.
Yeah, just tell a good story. It doesn't matter. Like ultimately these things are all like archetypes that we project ourselves onto. So like just because it's a woman doesn't mean I can't like get into it. It's more about her journey,
right?
You know?
And being told that like I'm criticizing like Rose, you know, you know what I'd love to do. And by the way, we've been talking for like an hour and 40 minutes, so I have to go back to my life in a little bit. But
I'm very pleased. This has been very, very fruitful. I mean, technically, we've only gotten in like 20 minutes of The Force Awakens.
But I do want to talk about.
So you can take it as long as you want.
The movie,
yes, please.
Which is called
The Last Jedi.
Thank you.
Okay, this is the one that's
funny. There was a tweet going like, "Thank you, Rian Johnson." There's this very interesting political discourse.
Look, Rian Johnson. Right, first,
I like what he tried to do.
I love what he tried to do. However, let me just put it this way. Okay, you're on whatever the main ship that's running out of fuel, which I didn't know that Star Wars ships had fuel, but whatever. Don't care. We're on the main ship. Does anybody remember what it's called?
The Nanotech.
The Nanotech. We're on the Nanotech.
I'm sorry, I don't know what it's called.
No, it's okay. It's called the Nanotech.
I'm being a dick.
You know what? I could name Admiral Akbar's capital ship. I don't know what the only rebel ship in the movie is called. So, Tantive 5 for Leia's ship, for those listening. We're on the Nanotech. And, you know, things are getting dicey. We just lost our base. We blew up Starkiller base, but it had no effect on the efficiency of the Empire because they're chasing after us in two super Star Destroyers that are like
super huge. They're the most destructive thing ever. They look really cool.
It's a dreadnought.
Yeah, there's this thing called a dreadnought, and the lasers are so heavy that they bend in space when they fly. You know, like, okay, we're being chased, okay?
I love that the tech just gets bigger every movie.
It just gets
bigger
so
Star
big.
Killer, the bigger dreadnought. Sorry,
so we have Death Stars on Star Destroyers. So anyway, so we're being chased, right? And we're all that's left of the Resistance. Luckily, we got on board General Leia, General Organa. She's in charge. Everything's going to be fine. Oh, but Kylo Ren's coming in, and he's shooting stuff, and he blows up the bridge. But that's okay because Leia secretly has Force powers. Okay, I'm going past all of that. The moment
you have to,
because I'm not going to get bogged down.
You have to.
Yeah, we can't focus too deep on that.
Yeah,
right?
you have to.
So Finn, who And this movie, by the way, I think is taking place 1 hour after the last movie.
Yeah, that was
it's
one
called, like you
decision.
always called it like the weekend plot because it's like a weekend.
Yeah. Okay. So the first 2 movies are taking place over the course of a weekend.
Yes.
Smartest thing J.J. Abrams did, by the way, is the third movie takes place like a year later. But anyway, so an hour ago, Finn was in a coma, but now he's walking around in his coma suit, and he's like, "Well, I got to find Rey. I don't know what's going on here, but like Rey went to find Luke Skywalker. Well, I have to go find her." Okay. So what does he do? He goes down to the escape pods, and in the escape pods, there's this. I think she's a mechanic. And this mechanic is sitting there, head in hands. Her sister died 15 minutes ago, but they put her in charge of making sure people don't use the escape pods. She's got a taser, and she has like knocked out like 3 people trying to escape the ship. Let me give you some.
I don't think that's 100% accurate.
Gregory.
I don't think she.
Greg.
She was in charge of tasing people.
I don't think she was in charge of anything. I think she was just down there.
She was doing maintenance around that area, and she just happened to have a tool to tase someone with.
Okay, so she's a volunteer security guard.
She's not security, Boman. No. She's just down there.
She's a mechanic attacking other crew members that she thinks should not be leaving the ship. Whatever she is, whatever that means.
By the way, that
she's a person
was a former, First Order person. So she thought maybe that he would return.
We don't know if she knows that. That's not really made ever clear.
Greg. First of all, the moment that she finds out that he's Finn, she goes all fangirl on him.
Right.
And is like, "Oh my God, you're a hero of the Resistance." Excuse me.
Yeah. Right. But then
you know what, Greg
changes.
Greg.
She's like, "Wait a minute, is he gonna backstab us now? That after he like betrayed the First Order too? Is he like a double crossing, like?" Bastard, you know?
Boman, what's your point, though? Where is this going?
I don't know where Greg went, but what I'm saying is...
I get it. I get where Greg went.
What I'm saying is that
Thanks, Steve.
No one in the original rebellion ever tased any other member of the rebellion to do their job. Additionally, nobody on the Titanic that's being chased by demons thinks that, like, if we just jump off this ship in an escape pod, we'll somehow be safe. Like, from what I understand, anybody that even slows down in space gets killed. So getting out in an escape pod seems to be counterintuitive to survival. Then I can only conclude that the people that represent, let's call them the lower class of resistance, must have been on some kind of payroll system that they now think is going to no longer pay them to be resistance fighters, and they would rather risk death than stay on board with any of our main characters. So you've now set a bar for resistance fighters that's there. Meanwhile,
hey man, shit shows are shit shows. Like,
I mean, like, I wish I could. That's real true. But look, but what you've done, what the storyteller has told me is that the people that are working for our heroes are like being press ganged, literally at the edge of a taser, to do their job, which is pilot this ship that is running out of gas and will blow up, because the leadership has also decided to not tell anybody, and I don't exactly know why.
It's a very odd thing.
We're just going to planet Salt. It's fine.
Yeah, it's a very odd decision. I mean,
here's the thing. Given Finn's previous history of betraying the First Order, I feel like it is somewhat justifiable to make that kind of connection.
I kind of get that one.
But
yeah.
Greg, what about the other crew that she was tasing?
Are there other people she's tasing? I'd have to rewatch.
She says her. You know what?
Wait, we gotta look this up.
No, we don't have to look here. Wait, Rose script. What's the name of them?
The Last Jedi
transcript.
You want the Last Jedi transcript? That's what you want.
Okay, all right. Here we go.
I was gonna say it is very odd that like this whole thing of like, well, she didn't. You know, the leadership didn't have to tell people what was happening. It's
I remember hearing some rumor that like there was an alternate version where like Haldo says she was afraid that there was a spy, a First Order spy, and that's why she didn't tell anyone.
I would buy that more. I don't know, just as somebody who's like worked for a company at all, like if your leadership doesn't tell you the direction of the company, it's very odd and it's really weird. And it's like people quit over that sort of thing, you know? Like you need to be transparent with the people who work for you, especially in crisis
situations.
Yeah.
Look, the fact of the matter is we haven't even gotten 15 minutes into this movie and we're already having problems with some of the juxtapositions the characters are saying. Okay?
Wait, like she did chase?
Yeah, I think she mentions it. She's like,
it's a line that she says. She says, I had to tase like 15 people.
I apologize.
Okay, so Greg, you don't get to talk for 5 minutes. That's the rule. That's I don't make the rule.
Take points away from Gryffindor like that.
Look,
come on.
Look, there's a gate. There's a gate, and if you want to get through that gate, you better like come with your A game.
I misunderstood.
I bought The Last Jedi so that I could have this conversation.
You bought it on Blu-ray?
No, I downloaded it. We're not allowed to talk about who that was. So, all right. Look. Okay. Now that I've given my nerd card and showed that it is up to date and my subscription is pure, let's keep going. Okay. All right, Greg.
All right.
So as we progress, we now learn about General Snoke. Okay, General Snoke, who has a comical use of the Force in terms of how much he beats General
Hux.
General Hux.
You just call him Cucks.
I don't know. That's a dangerous word to use nowadays.
Hux.
What do you mean it's a dangerous word? The only people who use it is Republicans and angry nerds. So look.
I was called a cuck once because I was
called
like
a cuck
defending Star, or like not defend, like I was like getting heated about Star Wars, and they're like,
"Shut up." A lot of nerd culture.
Yeah. You know what? Here, tell you what. I will
keep going
because we don't have endless time.
We don't. So
look,
Snoke.
let me go to my no. I'm gonna jump Snoke because I think it's self-explanatory. Let's just talk about Luke Skywalker. We will end where this series should have ended, with Luke Skywalker. Luke Skywalker is. Clearly something bad happened, right? He wanted to kill his nephew while he slept. And while I'm not the biggest judge of character when it comes to like who we are over the course of decades, sure, that could have been an inevitable conclusion for the guy's, caretaker and teacher to want to kill him while he slept with maybe one of the loudest knives ever created, a lightsaber. But okay, he launches his lightsaber. The kid wakes up, Force crushes, I'm assuming, some kind of building, and that is the creation of Kylo Ren. As a result, Luke Skywalker is in hiding, very much like all of the masters that have come before him. Now, something that gets brought up a lot by people who are angry is the fact that, like, oh, are you telling me that Obi-Wan wasn't, like, totally crazy and living in the desert? Or, excuse me, actually, what about Yoda? He was living on Dagobah. Okay, first and foremost. Interesting.
Girlfriend was just leaving to buy vegetables. That's why she was masked up and everything.
We're not allowed to talk about it, Greg.
We can talk about it.
You just have to use the fun pet name.
We should talk about Luke Skywalker.
Okay, so look. So we're on this planet. He's not by himself, by the way. There are fish nuns who are taking care of some kind of tree. And he's decided he's going to take all of these books and hide them at the base of the tree. And even though he's decided to opt out as a Jedi and that there will be no Jedi after him, he still cares a lot about the book. So let's just say the guy's conflicted, right? He's crashed his X-Wing into the ocean. What else has he done? He's gone. He's not talking to anybody anymore. He is not the embodiment of what it means to be a Jedi Knight. Obi-Wan Kenobi went to Tatooine in order to...
froze out there.
Did I freeze?
No, you're still good to me.
All right. Obi-Wan Kenobi went to Tatooine as a caretaker and to look over Luke Skywalker and protect him should badness come. Okay? He was a crazy old man in the desert, but only functioned like that was his cover, if you will. Yoda, meanwhile, Yoda is a true like hermit in that he goes to a planet where the only people that he has are like snakes and weird creatures that might eat you if you step into the swamp. Like that guy really went super out there. And from what I understand, it's a result of like reading the situation so badly that thousands of Jedi ended up being purged, and the Emperor himself defeated him in one-on-one combat.
Yeah, he lives in regret.
He lives in regret. So Luke Skywalker is like not either of those things, and he's not crazy. He's just opting out. So okay, so this guy, this archetype, is a master who is opting out of his responsibilities, and I don't have a problem with that.
That part's interesting.
That part is interesting. What I do have a problem with is that, one, Rey doesn't learn anything from him, which means that the only purpose for going there was for essentially a 30-minute cameo on behalf of Mark Hamill, who's an excellent actor. She doesn't learn anything from him.
That's true.
But she learns to embrace failure, which is the thesis of the film. Sorry, go on.
I mean, embracing failure does happen because of this film. So what goes forward, though, is Luke Skywalker, who has the means to get off the planet, instead, after seeing Rey go away, and by the way, she's robbed him. She's taken all the books from him. She's left him without anything over the course of like what I'm going to say is a 15-hour period, because I believe that the ship that's flying has 15 hours left of fuel. So all of that happens within 50. She takes a nap. She talks for a little while. There's a giant weird sinkhole that's the embodiment of evil, and she leaves. So amidst all of that, there's one important thing that ends up happening, which is that Luke Skywalker is then convinced, I should do something. I should be like this younger generation of like go-getters. The millennials were right, or the Gen Zers are right. Like I can't just be this boomer that like is living in regret because Vietnam didn't work out the way that I wanted. Like whatever multiple like film school surgery that you want to do on that decision process and how it reflects to the real world, right? Yeah. I could embrace all of that, except that when we're on planet Salt,
not Hoth.
It's called Crate, guys.
Which confuses me because aren't there crate dragons on Tatooine?
Yeah, crate dragons on Tatooine, and then there's a Darth crate as well in the expanded.
I don't want to talk. You know what? I don't want to talk about it. So we're on Crate, okay? And I have just watched the willful massacre of what was left of the Resistance. I have just watched Finn, who was about to sacrifice himself, get knocked out of the air, and then told the most like psychopathic logic of like, we're not going to save the thing. What is it, Greg? We are not going to save the things we love by fighting the things we hate.
Right.
It's the reverse, but yes.
Whatever. That just like you just marginalized.
That was one of the worst moments in Star Wars.
But it's like what you've done is let's just keep it in universe. Anyone who has ever died fighting against the Empire, they were wrong.
Yeah. That's how we're going to win. Not fighting what we hate, saving what we love. That's the full line.
I don't look. Okay, so but I'm going past it. I don't want to
drop down the movie considerably after that.
Yeah. I don't. Yeah, but I'm going to move past it because I'm feeling down. Needless to say, I'm in the movie theater and I'm contemplating that my whole life might not actually mean anything, and that like now a bunch of like snow foxes, like I'm just confused, right? And some things, and yeah, like I don't know where we're going. And then Luke Skywalker appears.
Right.
And I'm like, oh God, thank you. This is now going to all make sense. And Luke Skywalker walks over to Princess Leia and hands her a pair of dice. and I'm not going to talk about those fucking dice.
We don't have
We're not going to talk about the
The
dice.
Solo movie is 2 hours talking about the dice. We don't talk about
And came out like 2 years later. So
I don't understand this.
So-
of dice.
So you know, and he's like, you know, hey sis, what's up? Daddy's here. You know, like, and-
Christ.
yeah, come on. Everybody's got a Pornhub account. It's the quarantine, okay? Something is wrong on that website. So anyway, so Luke Skywalker, you know, okay, so the Death Star battering ram cannon, I think that's what it's called, Greg?
Yeah,
Right?
just keep talking.
By the way, Isaac,
Yeah.
I saved it for last. Okay, I saved it for last. All right. So the Death Star battering ram cannon has just opened fired on the most incredible wall ever built. Like, Death Star cannons blow up planets, not this wall. It makes a hole about that big, just enough for our hero to then walk out. And oh my God, like the gorilla AT-ATs, the flying, you know,
The
pyramid
transport. Yeah.
transport, Kylo Ren, General Hux, everyone's like, oh shit,
Right.
Luke Skywalker is in the house. And he even said at the beginning of like the movie,
He's like,
of,
yeah, what do you want me to go?
yeah, what do you want me to do? Come in
order?
with a laser
Yeah.
sword and fix everything? He's gonna do it.
Right.
And suddenly inside of me is this like welling up of emotion.
Right.
And I'm like, oh my God. Like, not only is this referencing Dark Empire, which was like the only piece of Luke Skywalker fandom that like I was like, oh yes, you know, like
AT-ATs were like shooting at him, and
he's just like, you know, like,
AT-AT
yeah, right. And he shows up, and the entire, what is it called?
The First Order?
Remnant? The First Order. Thank you.
First Order. Yep.
The entire First Order. I can't even remember their names. The entire First Order opens fire. Everything. Boom, 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 boom. Dust clears, and of course he's fine because he's Luke Skywalker. And I can only assume that if Kylo Ren can stop laser bolts with his mind, and Emperor Snoke, Grand Leader Snoke, whatever,
Supreme
can
Leader.
like flip people and spin them around with his mind. And Yoda can, I mean, at this point, you know, fight like a giant, you know, like whatever. You get the point. Of all the people that I've ever seen use force powers, including that weird video game that's like kind of like
Force Awakens. Yeah, that was canon, but then it wasn't canon.
And then guys yank Star Destroyers out of the sky.
Yeah,
like,
Force Awakens or Force Unleashed.
all of that exists. All of that exists. And now Luke Skywalker has shown up. I am going to watch something unprecedented. And Kylo Ren is like, you know what? I'm going down there myself. And now I'm getting like a crazy samurai vibe, right? And they're both like, and they pass each other and they fight. And then, and just as this emotional bubble is reaching orgasmic levels of like relevance, symbolism, nostalgia, hope.
Imagine.
It converges. And all of these feelings and all of this magic, all of this like desire. And Luke Skywalker is phoning it in. Luke Skywalker is force projecting himself across the galaxy, which means he's not even really there. And so help me God to your listeners, Isaac, if any one of them responds back with like, yeah, but that's the sign of a true master to not even fight the battle, they should give me their address and risk the
Turn on your
quarantine.
location. I just want to talk.
I just want to talk, and I just want to, you know. But for him to be phoning it in, to be Skyping in the final battle, I have literally in my life, all of the books that I've ever read and all the movies that I've bought just to hate, I have literally never seen a gaping, bleeding plot hole in which the final battle is an illusion. And just when I think it can get worse, it can't get worse because he has an aneurysm and dies.
But whatchamacallit? I mean, I have a commenter who's saying
he used the Force so hard that all of the blood vessels exploded in his head. But wait, there's more, because you think it ends there. But no, it doesn't, because he fades away like all the other Jedi that have come before him. And I have to suffer through 3 seconds of a close-up shot on a pair of dice.
When did those dice become such emblematic of Star Wars?
I don't want to talk about the dice. First of all, Han Solo was a Sabak player, so I don't. Anyway,
yeah.
So,
just dice have to do with Sabak.
I mean, look. So.
But Triple A says it subverts your expectations. And Angry Brony says he Skypes so hard he dies.
I still don't understand why you guys aren't getting the nanotech part of all this.
You know what? I could accept it. I could accept
nanotech, actually.
So wait, talk about those 3 seconds. Talk about those 3 seconds.
Nanos got onto Rey, and she carried him to the planet.
This is, I know it's kind of a bullshit reason, but to me, Luke Skyping it in, it reminded me a lot of the Tales of the Jedi, the Sith War. They touched upon Jedi battle meditation. And I thought that was a direct influence from that.
No, the direct, what Rian Johnson is reflecting on, and I watched him on Twitter do this, is that there is a book dedicated to the Jedi Academy, written by, I think, Luke Skywalker. Very much how there is a series of books about the Bounty Hunter Code, written by or annotated by Boba Fett. And there's an entry in which it describes some lesser-known Jedi powers that include the ability for a Jedi to grow himself as large as he wants and shrink himself as small as a molecule, and apparently be able to project.
Did they explain that in the Fortnite thing?
What?
Remember how Palpatine's coming back?
Oh God.
We haven't even touched on that movie yet.
I don't even want. I don't think we have time. We don't have time. It's been 2 hours. I've given it. I've risked my career as much as I want.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Keep going. This is you give me gold. Let's talk about those 3 seconds.
Isaac, if I never work again, you have to pay me once a month for the rest of your life. So look. So all I'm saying is that, and by the way, to respond to the person that. AAA is his name?
Yes.
So to respond to AAA directly, yes, I understand the notion of subverting expectations. But that's not what subverting expectations should look like. Subverting expectations shouldn't be like, oh, did you think that you were about to watch something awesome? Well, you don't.
Right.
I mean, that's like if I came to your house, and I will, and I have hey, congratulations, AAA, you just won $1 million. No, you didn't. It's like, why? I don't know you. I feel like you're hurting my feelings for no reason. You just told me something awesome, and then you took it away. I'll never get the last 15 seconds of my life back, and now I hate you.
By the way, to be fair, I think he's being a little ironic when he's putting in
Charlotte because he's
no. But what I'm saying is though, it was a real. A lot of people really love that movie.
Yeah.
And a lot of people's defenses were that it was subverting your expectations. You want to watch a movie about spaceships and laser swords and battles and stuff like that. And the answer is
that's what I paid for.
It's called Star Wars.
But then you got exactly that from Rise of Skywalker. You got a very generic version.
I am not going to get baited into this. I'm not going to get baited. I'm not going to get, because I will say that after the last Fall of Skywalker.
Rise of Skywalker.
No, what's the second one?
Last Jedi.
The Last Jedi. Okay. after The Last Jedi, I look, this isn't like a bit I'm doing. I literally can't remember.
No, I know. I've talked to you. You don't.
I mean the ending where they're all positive about like the hope for the future. There's only like 10 of them. Connection interrupted. Come back. Force powers.
Forget the.
Greg, the reason I won't talk about the last movie is that you don't have to. I mean, like I felt everything that I just vomited onto this live stream. I felt it so much that I can, much like trauma, I can recall it and bring us back there. Right? It's a decision that an artist made, and I try very hard to respect the decisions that other filmmakers make. I try very, very hard. One of the things that makes Star Wars so incredible and such an experience is that it speaks directly to my formative years. I mean, I did think that I should, in my life, try to be like Luke Skywalker. You know, and for every woman that I know that's a nerd, all of them wanted to be Princess Leia. Like, Princess Leia is a badass, strong female character.
Mofo.
You know. Yeah, like, you know, and everyone's dog was Chewie. You know, like, so it's just it really it's such a part of who I am as a human being. You know, I imagine that religious people feel the same way about their faith and like going to church regularly. Like, that was Star Wars to me. Star Wars informs my ability to sell my own ideas when I'm in a pitch. Like, I go, yes, it's like this meets this meets this. Like, it is just a part of who I am. And to watch another artist, and this is, and I don't fault Rian Johnson or J.J. Abrams. They're the people that fate or destiny chose to write and direct these movies. Yeah. I know Chris Terrio, the writer of the Rise of Skywalker, or at least I did know him back in the day. You know, I'm so happy
about Chris Terrio.
Yeah, I'm happy that they got a shot. You know, like, there's nobody. I don't want to take away from that. That's not that. It's fun. It's gratuitous. It's the thing that, like, the internet is most known for, which is just taking a shit on people's life choices, careers, and whatever. I don't want to do that. No. But as a fan, as a nerd, as a human being who loved this story so much, it physically and emotionally hurts me to see these people that I have grown up emulating be turned into that. And that's where this comes from. You know, it's fun and it's enjoyable, and I get a kick at it. I'm glad Isaac gets I'm glad. And I'm sure when this gets recorded, other people will see it and everything. And this part of the podcast will not be remembered because who gives a shit about this part? But it's really important to know that when you are given the stewardship of something as big as that, as big as Star Wars, because there's not, most likely in our lifetimes, there will not be something that can replace Star Wars. Well, there won't. Actually, I'll say it. There will not be another Star Wars, because we've all, even Steven, young Steven, we've all, whatever.
You'll hate this, though, but someone's argued that the MCU is like the new Star Wars.
Sure, and that's fine. But the thing is that I wasn't a 12-year-old watching the MCU. But I wasn't what I'm saying is I wasn't a 12-year-old watching the MCU. You know? Yeah. I am gone. I have aged out of the ability to feel these things for people. It's your first time doing anything, you know?
Yeah.
Star Wars was the thing that informed me on how to be a better human being. As a result, I am now a baked and formed human being. That doesn't mean I'm not going to see something. I like a lot of the MCU, by the way. I know you mentioned I don't like it. I like a lot of it. I think Captain America is a great character, and his story arc is really interesting. That's another podcast. But in conclusion, it's just when, as a corporation, as a mega corporation, Disney makes more GDP than most Western developed countries. When you are given the stewardship of maintaining something that, you know, some people argued was mishandled, and sure, I'm once again, I'm not George Lucas, right? I think he really likes what he created, you know, and I think he likes it even more now. But when you are given the stewardship to keep going, to pass the baton to, be more like The Rock and Arnold Schwarzenegger. Be respectful. Be aware of what you're doing. Like, there's a lot of people who used to be children who now have a lot of money that want to spend it a certain way. And I want to dress up like Kylo Ren, and I want to go to Comic-Con. I want that. But you kind of ruined it for me. Like, you kind of broke my heart. And now every time I see Star Wars, I see my ex-wife.
I don't know if anyone can end it as better than that.
That is a really good ending. Although one thing I have to throw in though, I know you love the Thrawn trilogy. Were you ever aware about how like Thrawn was? It was kind of weird how they threw out the expanded canon versus like doing what Marvel does, where none of the Marvel movies are direct adaptations of like a story one to one. They just pick and choose elements from the character's history and take what they like. And they did reintroduce Thrawn in like the Star Wars Rebels cartoons. Have you watched any of the CGI cartoons?
Sure. It's not Thrawn. It's a character that looks like Thrawn and sounds like Thrawn, but it's not Thrawn.
Oh, so you did watch a bunch of Rebels?
Of course, Rebels is a great show. So's The Mandalorian.
I haven't watched Rebels.
But it's not. But look, and
or Clone Wars.
Very, very quickly. That's not Star Wars. That's its own thing. That's Star Wars Rebels. That's a cartoon that takes place and borrows and blends a lot of things from a show called or from a franchise called Star Wars. But it's not. It's its own thing. Mm. I personally don't. I mean. Timothy Zahn is one of the authors that taught me how to read. Like the Thrawn trilogy. I've read the Thrawn trilogy more times. Every single night for the last 6 months, I found out I could, Audible. Since I started my own podcast, I found out I could get some free downloads. I downloaded the Thrawn trilogy. I listened to it every night before I go to sleep. I love the Thrawn trilogy. However, that's not Admiral Thrawn. That is a character called Thrawn. It's not. It's he's more like a vampire in the show than he's Sherlock Holmes in the books. It's a different character. I appreciate the fact that was it Filoni? Who's running Filoni? Yeah, Filoni. Is I think he's like 2 years older than me, so he's in the same generation of nerd. I see what he's doing. I appreciate what he's doing. The George Lucas's decision to destroy the expanded universe was as a result of one author killing Chewbacca. I don't agree with it. I think Chewie should have died, but I understand why somebody got really offended for killing everybody's favorite dog. But I don't get bothered by Rebels or really even like the Han Solo movie. Like that movie doesn't bother me because those movies they're very much like fan films. Like they're like really interesting what if scenarios. Or like, this is my take on something I read when I was a kid and now I'm making it happen. Like, cool. Like I don't have like, I think it's well executed. I think they're good stories, but I don't relate them to the feelings that the original movies did. Like episode 1 through 9, that is Star Wars. Everything else is like a kind of an offshoot of it. It doesn't exist in the same way. In the same way that the comic books are like the movie. The reason why I don't think anybody gets too bent out of shape about the Marvel movies is that they're just an interpretation of like quite literally like millions of words worth of storytelling. Like if you don't like the fact that Stark died, he didn't. There's an entire.
You can read the version where he lives.
Yeah, if you as simultaneously, if you don't like Ironheart, the person who is the person who's accepted like that now she's Iron Man, or the mantle of Iron Man. Like you can keep reading Iron Man stories. Like franchises have a really interesting way of self-containing things that happen, and it's like I really do wish that more people gave credit to those storytellers because like I'll bring up Warhammer 40K really quickly. Shameless plug. I hope they hire me for more stuff. But like Warhammer 40K created a really interesting plot device inside of its own universe, which is the warp. And the warp is quite literally, by definition, where human imagination comes from. And anything can exist in the warp at any time for any reason. And now on some notes, it's like, well, that seems kind of like a loophole, right? And it is. It's a well-used loophole. Yeah. Because if you don't like something that one author came up with, vagaries of the warp, man. Who knows what happened there? That was just one story from one person's
It's a built-in retcon device.
It's a built-in retcon. Star Wars suffered from the fact that it was shepherded by one person's intellect for a really long time that wasn't really paying attention to all of the other things happening around him. Yeah. And
it's
when
hard to keep a consistent continuity.
Exactly. So other people whose job it is to maintain timelines, took over. And then when he saw that, and I mean, he basically pulled he went Old Testament on them, where it's like, wait a minute, I don't like that you killed Chewie. So everything's different. If some of the viewers or whatever your followers say that like the MCU is the new Star Wars, I mean, Steven's got a better idea if that's true or not.
I think it is.
Yeah, you think it is?
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, I just think about like I went and saw all those MCU movies like with my friends like the night they came out, and we talked about them a ton. Star Wars, we just like fought about it for a week and then moved on.
Yeah. Are any of the MCU characters like somebody you look up to? Like, I mean, you're young enough to have in your formative years like looked up to?
Formative years, yeah, sure.
Like 12?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Which would you say is the most influential? Would it be like Iron Man or Captain America? Like from
Captain America. Anybody that wants anybody
Cap. Yeah. I mean, I know guys that are 34 who are still like dressing up as Cap. So people love that stuff.
Anybody that doesn't like Captain America, I mean, that's like not like that's like hating the Beatles. Like, just shut the fuck up.
I also like Iron Man too.
Yeah, I mean, Iron Man's cool, but Iron Man is Han Solo. Like, nobody should want to be Han Solo. Han Solo is the guy with the really cool car that like whose kids hate him eventually. Like nobody wants to be Han Solo.
Yeah.
Like
a lot of
literal
people
sense maybe,
like
but like too. Yeah, that's kind of cool to do that kind of adventure. To
sure,
like that kind of like smug.
Captain America is like the higher moral authority.
Greg, if you have children and they want to be Han Solo, like just start saving money for their bail. You just nobody should want to be Han Solo. He is the cool guy you see from afar. You should want to be like Luke Skywalker. You should want to be like Captain America. It's really obvious who you shouldn't want to be like Wolverine. You know what? I don't know if he's listening, but do you guys remember Fenris?
Oh, that sounds familiar.
No, okay, all right. My buddy Fenris is a neo-pagan. He is Wolverine. He terrifies me. Like, I
see him commenting on your Facebook.
Yeah, that guy is Wolverine. Like, it's terrifying. You should want to be like Scott, the Cyclops guy. You should want to, or Leonardo. Like there are very obvious people that you should want to be like. You don't want to be Raphael. Raphael like suffers from depression and like probably alcoholism when he's not in a kids show. So
I get what you're saying.
But all right, I'm giving you. Yeah, it's been a while. I'm so happy that Steven wandered in here.
Just for the record, I clicked on this because I thought I was going to be listening, but then it was like, turn on your camera, and I was like, oh, okay, this is cool. This is going to be some open forum. And then I was in it, and I realized there were people watching, and there was a discussion happening, and I just went with it to play along.
I'm really happy that you did, and we were supposed to do a phone call, and
please still call me. I want to talk to you about my life.
No, that's fine. The thing is that the days are kind of blending together. Here, wait, let me show you really quickly. I 3D printed a version of myself.
That's the coolest shit. I love it.
And if you'll notice that book right there,
yeah,
that's the rule book. Whenever I tell Greg like you don't get to talk for 5 minutes, there's a page of rules.
That's pretty rad. So you have a 3D printer?
No, I have friends that.
Got it.
Printers, so
well, that's cool. Yeah. But Boman, do call me not broadcasting.
I will. No, I do. I just have to find my phone. I don't know where my phone is.
I'll call it, and then it'll make a sound.
It's definitely dead.
Oh, okay.
And I unlinked my laptop because I've been trying to finish the script recently, and my phone is linked to my laptop, and just
distraction.
that and Sarah hates it when I'm on the phone. In short, I will call you Stephen.
Cool.
Isaac, I will follow up with you. I really appreciated your notes on the script. Greg, I hope you realize that you should start drawing again, and you should draw some of the stuff that I asked you to draw. I don't know.
I've been fighting so hard for that.
Yeah, like you we're in quarantine. I know you have nothing to do.
You want to hear something?
I know.
You know, it's funny. I was actually drawing a lot last night, but recently there's a new game, Hearthstone expansion. It's
the death of art right there. There's this new game. All right. On that note, thank you so much. Thank you to your listeners, Isaac. Thank you, Stephen.
Pleasure having you. Thank you for tuning in to the Rambling Ranting Review Hour. Just to end it off, would you like to make a plug for the stuff you want people to check out before you head off? Both you and Stephen. Plug for the Warhammer series. Where can they see the trailer for it? Because I know that's up.
You can go to Warhammer TV. They've got their own YouTube channel. You can see the recent trailer that we dropped, and it will be out later this year. Not sure yet about the platform, but it's an exciting. It'll be exciting to be the first animated series for that franchise. And
Stephen, anything you want to plug?
Nah, I'm good, but thank you.
All right. That's perfectly fine. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with us. And remember, lobster and tennis, but don't you grab it.